You're paying $2,800 for a Toronto basement where you hear your neighbor breathe, or $2,200 for a Vancouver shoebox where you can cook, answer the door, and use the bathroom without moving. Rent climbs, salaries don't. Landlords want deposits plus a kidney, and listings smell like regret. You've applied endlessly only to lose to someone offering 6 months up front because housing is now an auction. But here's the secret. Canada still has towns where rent is so cheap it looks like a scam. $500 apartments, $400 houses, real homes in real communities. They're remote, but maybe they meet your requirements. Ready? Subscribe if you're tired of landlords treating basic human shelter like a luxury commodity and want to know where in Canada rent hasn't completely lost touch with reality. Number 10. Minto, New Brunswick. Minto sits in central New Brunswick with about 2,500 people, a coal mining history that ended decades ago, and rental prices so low that people from Fredericton assume you're lying when you quote them. You can rent an entire house, not an apartment but a detached house, with a yard and multiple bedrooms, for $400 to $600 monthly according to Kijiji and Facebook Marketplace listings that have been up for months because demand is approximately zero. These aren't teardowns or condemned properties. These are actual houses that people lived in, maintained reasonably well, and are now renting for less than what Toronto residents pay weekly for a bedroom in a house with 7 other people and 1 bathroom that always smells like someone else's mistakes. The rental market in Minto isn't competitive. It's desperate. Landlords post listings that say things like flexible on price and will consider any reasonable offer, which translates to please, someone, anyone occupy this property so I don't have to pay property taxes on an empty building. According to rental listings from late 2024 and early 2025, 2-bedroom houses in Minto list for $450 to $550 monthly. 3-bedroom houses with basements and garages go for $550 to $700. Apartments, when you can find them, run $300 to $450 for 1 or 2 bedrooms. These prices aren't negotiable in the sense that landlords want more. They're negotiable in the sense that landlords will take less if you commit to a year lease, because stability beats vacancy. The town has essential services, a medical clinic with family doctors who are actually accepting patients, which in New Brunswick's healthcare crisis is remarkable, a grocery store, a gas station, schools that serve the area. It's not a ghost town or a collection of burned-out buildings. It's a small maritime community that lost its economic base when the mines closed and never recovered, leaving behind infrastructure and housing for a population that no longer exists in numbers that justified building it all. Employment in Minto is limited, the mine is closed, most jobs are retail, healthcare, education, or you commute to Fredericton about 45 minutes away. But here's the financial equation that matters. If you're paying $450 monthly for a house instead of $1,800 for a Toronto basement, you can afford to earn less, work part-time, or take lower-paying jobs that match your interests rather than your desperation. Your housing costs drop so dramatically that your entire financial life recalibrates. One person on Reddit described renting in Minto as finally understanding what having money left over after rent feels like. I'm not rich. I just suddenly have $400 extra monthly that used to go to a Toronto landlord who fixed nothing and raised rent annually because the market allowed it. Number 9. Shaunavon, Saskatchewan. Shaunavon sits in southwest Saskatchewan with about 1,700 people. Agricultural economy, lasting and rental prices that make urban Canadians check the listings 3 times because surely there's a typo or a scam or some hidden condition, like house haunted by previous tenant who died from disbelief at low rent. 2-bedroom houses in Shaunavon rent for $450 to $600 monthly according to listings on Kijiji, Facebook Marketplace, and local rental boards. 3-bedroom houses with basements and garages go for $600 to $800. Apartments are even cheaper at $350 to $500 for 1 or 2 bedrooms, prices that Toronto residents pay for parking spots or storage lockers for belongings they can't fit in apartments too small for actual living. These are real houses with yards where dogs and kids can exist outside. Not theoretical yards that are actually shared driveways or balconies that fit 1 chair if you exhale while sitting. Properties come with garages, basements, and square footage that makes urban condos look like elaborate closets marketed as cozy, because oppressively small doesn't show well in listings. Shaunavon has Shaunavon Hospital and Care Center providing healthcare, family doctors who are accepting patients, and medical services adequate for a town this size. There's a grocery store, gas station, restaurants, and essential services. It's not a metropolis, but it's functional with infrastructure that works and services that exist beyond hope the ambulance comes before you die. The economy is agricultural with grain elevators, farms, and the people who support farming. Employment locally is limited to agriculture, healthcare, education, retail, and municipal services. But Swift Current is an hour away for additional employment options, and the cost of living is so low that part-time work or remote income covers comfortable living instead of just survival. According to residents, groceries in Shaunavon run about $300 to $400 monthly for one person, slightly higher than cities due to transportation costs, but nothing that destroys budgets. Utilities average $100 to $150 monthly, including heat, among the lowest utility costs in Canada thanks to Saskatchewan's provincial power and gas system that hasn't been fully privatized into profit-maximizing nightmares that extract maximum revenue from captive customers. One person who moved from Regina described it as suddenly having money again, not making more. Just spending $800 less on rent monthly, which is the difference between paycheck to paycheck stress and actually saving money while eating food that isn't ramen. Number 8. Flin, Manitoba. Flin sits on the Manitoba-Saskatchewan border with about 5,000 people and rental prices that Toronto residents assume must be weekly rates because monthly rates at these prices violate everything they understand about housing costs. 2-bedroom apartments rent for $400 to $600 monthly. 3-bedroom houses go for $600 to $800. These aren't scams. They're real listings for real properties in a real town where demand is so low that landlords are grateful for tenants who pay on time and don't destroy the place. The town has a hospital providing emergency services and healthcare, family doctors though availability varies, and medical infrastructure adequate for the population. There's a grocery store where a jug of milk costs more than it should due to northern transportation, but still less than the rent difference between here and Winnipeg makes up for. Schools, services, and infrastructure all function because Flin isn't a ghost town. It's a small mining town that struggled economically but maintained population and services. According to rental listings from 2024 into early 2025, you can rent a 2-bedroom house with garage and yard for $500 monthly, a 3-bedroom house with basement lists for $700. Apartments in the few buildings that have them go for $350 to $500 for 1 or 2 bedrooms. The landlords aren't making massive profits. They're trying to avoid losses on properties that have value in theory, but no market demand to realize that value. The economy centers on Hudbay's mining operations, which employ hundreds, but also create volatility when metal prices drop or operations scale back. Employment outside mining is limited to healthcare, education, municipal services, and retail. But for remote workers or people with transferable skills, Flin offers something urban Canada destroyed: affordable living on modest income. The cost of living beyond rent is moderate. Groceries run $350 to $450 monthly for one person, higher than southern Manitoba due to transportation but manageable. Utilities average $150 to $200 monthly including heat, which is significant when winter temperatures hit -35. But Manitoba hydro rates are reasonable compared to privatized utilities in other provinces that treat electricity as profit center rather than public service. The town sits in Canadian Shield landscape with rock, forests, and lakes. It's built on terrain that makes streets wind rather than follow grids, creating geography unique for Manitoba. The recreation includes fishing, hiking, and outdoor activities for people who define quality of life through nature access rather than proximity to restaurants that serve 17 types of avocado toast. Number 7. Kapuskasing, Ontario. Kapuskasing sits in northeastern Ontario with about 8,000 people and rent so cheap that southern Ontario residents assume the town must be condemned, cursed, or built on an ancient burial ground that causes problems the listings don't mention. 1-bedroom apartments rent for $350 to $500 monthly. 2-bedroom apartments go for $450 to $650. Houses rent for $600 to $900 for 2 or 3 bedrooms with yards and garages. These are real prices on real listings that stay posted for months because demand is minimal and landlords are desperate for tenants who won't trash the place and disappear. The town has Sensenbrenner Hospital providing emergency services, diagnostic capabilities, and medical programs. There are family doctors accepting patients, which in Ontario's healthcare crisis is remarkable enough to be worth moving for independent of the rent savings. The town maintains schools, a recreation complex, grocery stores, and services that function because Kapuskasing isn't dying. It's just small and remote enough that market forces haven't inflated housing costs to absurd levels. According to rental listings on Kijiji, Facebook, and local classifieds, landlords advertise with phrases like available immediately and flexible lease terms, which are code for please rent this before I have another winter of paying utilities on an empty unit while getting zero income. The rental market isn't competitive. It's landlord saturated with more properties than people who want them. The economy historically centered on forestry and paper production, with some residents working in mining or government services. Employment opportunities are limited compared to cities, but remote work makes Kapuskasing viable for digital workers whose jobs exist anywhere with internet. Starlink has made Northern Ontario increasingly viable for remote employment that didn't work 5 years ago when internet was dial-up speeds and prayers. Cost of living beyond rent is reasonable for Northern Ontario. Groceries run $350 to $450 monthly for one person, slightly higher than Southern Ontario due to transportation, but nothing catastrophic. Utilities average $200 monthly in winter when heating costs spike because Northern Ontario winter is serious and lasts from October to April, with temperatures that regularly hit -35. Property taxes are low, around $2,000 annually on a home worth $120,000, which is less than some Toronto condo owners pay monthly in maintenance fees. For renters, this means landlords aren't passing along massive tax bills, allowing them to charge rent that actually correlates to local wages rather than requiring tech salaries to afford basic shelter. One person who relocated from Toronto described the financial transformation. I was paying $1,900 for a basement apartment in Toronto where I could hear everything above me, and the landlord never fixed anything. Now I pay $500 for a 2-bedroom apartment with a balcony, laundry in unit, and a landlord who actually responds to messages. I suddenly have $1,400 extra monthly. That's not small money, that's life-changing. Number 6. Dryden, Ontario. Northwestern Ontario's $500 houses. Dryden sits in northwestern Ontario with about 8,000 people, a paper mill history, and rental prices that make Thunder Bay residents question whether Dryden actually exists or is an elaborate hoax designed to make them feel bad about their own rent. 2-bedroom houses rent for $500 to $700 monthly. 3-bedroom houses with basements and garages go for $700 to $950. Apartments run $400 to $600 for 1 or 2 bedrooms. These prices aren't promotional or temporary. They're the market rate in a town where supply exceeds demand and landlords compete for tenants rather than the reverse. Dryden Regional Health Centre provides emergency services, diagnostic capabilities, and medical programs. There are family doctors accepting patients, specialists who visit regularly, and healthcare infrastructure solid for a town this size. The medical situation is better than many Northern Ontario towns, while rent remains cheaper than Southern Ontario parking spots. According to rental listings, properties advertise with pet-friendly, utilities included, and flexible move-in dates because landlords are sweetening deals to attract tenants in a market with more rentals than renters. This is the opposite of Toronto, where landlords demand credit checks, employment letters, references from 3 previous landlords, and your firstborn child just for the privilege of viewing an apartment you'll lose to someone who offered to pay a year up front. The economy historically depended on forestry and paper production, with employment in those industries, healthcare, education, and municipal services. Remote work has made Dryden viable for digital workers who can earn Toronto salaries while paying Dryden rent, creating arbitrage opportunities that dramatically improve financial situations without requiring increased income. Cost of living is low. Groceries run $300 to $400 monthly for one person, reasonable for Northern Ontario, where transportation adds costs but not catastrophically. Utilities average $175 to $225 monthly, including heat, which spikes in winter when temperatures drop to -35, and heating becomes survival equipment, not luxury. Winter is Northwestern Ontario winter, cold, dark, long, with snow from October to April, and temperatures that make Southern Ontario winter look moderate. But the houses have good insulation and heating systems because northern construction accounts for extreme cold. Summer brings warmth, fishing, and enjoying brief, beautiful weather before winter returns. One Reddit user described Dryden as, "Where I finally stopped feeling poor. I'm making the same money I made in Ottawa, but my rent dropped from $2,200 to $600, and suddenly I have savings," which is a completely foreign concept after years of living paycheck to paycheck because half my income disappeared into rent every month. Number 5. Campbellton, New Brunswick, maritime rent that defies logic. Campbellton sits in northern New Brunswick on the Quebec border with about 7,500 people and rental prices that make Moncton residents assume there's been a currency mistake or the town is actively sinking into the Restigouche River. 2-bedroom apartments rent for $400 to $600 monthly. 3-bedroom houses with yards go for $600 to $850. You can rent an entire house for less than what Toronto residents pay for a bedroom in a house with 5 roommates and a bathroom situation that requires scheduling and negotiation. The town has Campbellton Regional Hospital providing emergency services and healthcare, family doctors though availability requires some luck, and medical infrastructure adequate for the region. There are schools, grocery stores, and services covering daily needs. It's not a major center, but it's functional with infrastructure that works. According to rental listings from late 2024 and early 2025, landlords advertise properties with newly renovated, washer, dryer included, and flexible on lease terms because the rental market favors tenants dramatically. There's no bidding war. There's no competition with 50 other applicants. There's you, a landlord who's grateful you called, and a rental agreement that doesn't require selling plasma to afford. The economy includes forestry, fishing, healthcare, education, and cross-border commerce with Quebec. Employment is limited compared to cities, but the cost of living is so low that modest income supports comfortable living. Remote work makes Campbellton viable for people whose jobs don't require physical presence in offices where they pretend to be busy while attending meetings that could have been emails. Cost of living beyond rent is moderate for New Brunswick. Groceries run $300 to $400 monthly, utilities average $150 to $200 including heat. The town is close to Quebec where some goods are cheaper, creating opportunities for cross-border shopping that adds savings to already low housing costs. The location provides access to outdoor recreation, hiking, fishing, skiing at nearby Sugarloaf Provincial Park, and activities that don't require expensive memberships or fighting crowds. The Restigouche River runs through town providing scenic beauty and fishing opportunities. One person who relocated from Halifax described the financial relief. I was spending $1,800 monthly for a 1-bedroom apartment in Halifax that had mold problems the landlord ignored. Now I pay $500 for a 2-bedroom house with a yard, a garage, and a landlord who actually fixes things because he's grateful to have a tenant. The $1,300 monthly difference means I'm saving money for the first time in my adult life. Number 4. Hearst, Ontario. Francophone. Northern Ontario's cheap rent Hearst sits in Northern Ontario with about 5,500 people, Francophone majority, and rental prices that make Sudbury residents wonder if Hearst is actually real or a government conspiracy to make other northern towns feel expensive. 1-bedroom apartments rent for $350 to $500 monthly. 2-bedroom apartments go for $450 to $600. Houses rent for $600 to $850 for 2 or 3 bedrooms. These aren't promotional rates or housing for specific populations. These are market rates for a town where demand is low and landlords are realistic about what the local economy can support. Notre Dame Hospital de Hearst provides healthcare with emergency services and medical programs. There are family doctors accepting patients, which is remarkable given Ontario's doctor shortage. The town maintains schools, a recreation complex, grocery stores, and services adequate for the population. According to rental listings, properties advertise with Available Now, Pets Welcome, and First and Last Month Only, which in Ontario's rental market is almost unheard of because most landlords demand first, last damage deposit when they can get away with it, and credit checks that rival security clearances for government positions. The economy centers on forestry, mining support, healthcare, and education. Employment is limited to those sectors plus retail and municipal services. The population is predominantly Francophone, which matters if you're Anglophone considering relocation because daily life operates primarily in French, though bilingualism is common. Winter is Northern Ontario winter, -35 regularly, dark, long, with snow that requires constant management. But the Francophone culture means different winter traditions, festivals, and approaches to surviving cold that make it slightly more bearable through community and cultural activities. One resident described Hearst's rental market as what Ontario used to be like before housing became an investment commodity instead of shelter. Here, rent is based on what locals can afford, not what the market will bear, because the market won't bear much when most people work in forestry or healthcare and earn normal wages, not tech salaries. Number 3. Minto. Manitoba. Prairie Town. With $300 rent, Minto sits in southwestern Manitoba with about 900 people and rents so absurdly cheap that Winnipeg residents assume the listings are elaborate phishing schemes designed to steal personal information, because nobody actually rents houses for $350 monthly in 2025. Except in Minto, they do. 2-bedroom houses rent for $350 to $550. 3-bedroom houses go for $500 to $700. These are actual houses with yards, not apartments or rooms, but entire detached properties for less than urban Canadians pay weekly for cramped bedrooms in houses where 10 people share one bathroom. The town has a medical clinic with family doctors and basic healthcare services. For hospital care, Brandon is 45 minutes away, providing emergency services and specialist care. The distance requires planning for medical needs but is manageable, especially when rent is $350 instead of $1,900, leaving money for transportation and healthcare expenses that would be impossible in expensive cities. According to rental listings that stay posted for months, landlords advertise with flexible lease terms, pets negotiable, and utilities can be included, because the rental market is so tenant-favorable that landlords offer incentives to attract anyone willing to occupy the property and pay something approaching regular rent. Cost of living beyond rent is incredibly low. Groceries run $300 to $400 monthly, utilities average $100 to $150. Total monthly expenses for housing, utilities, and food can be under $1,000, which is less than many urban Canadians pay just for rent before any other expenses. Hit that like button if these rent prices are making you reconsider every life choice that led to paying $2,000 for a Toronto basement where the ceiling is low enough to require ducking and the landlord thinks fixing anything is optional. Winter is Prairie, Manitoba. Winter, -30 regularly, wind that cuts through inadequate clothing, and snow from November to March. But houses have good insulation, heating systems that work, and costs are manageable with Manitoba Hydro's reasonable utility rates. Summer is warm and beautiful with big skies and agricultural landscapes that either calm you or bore you depending on your relationship with horizontal space. One person who relocated from Winnipeg described the transformation. "I was paying $1,400 for a 1-bedroom apartment in Winnipeg with parking that cost extra and a building where the heat barely worked in winter. Now I pay $400 for a 2-bedroom house with garage, yard, and landlord who's just happy someone's living here. The $1,000 monthly difference means I'm actually living instead of just surviving paycheck to paycheck." Number 2. Liverpool. Nova Scotia, Atlantic Canada's $500 houses. Liverpool sits on Nova Scotia's South Shore with about 2,800 people and rental prices that make Halifax residents question whether they're being scammed by urban landlords or whether Liverpool properties come with serious undisclosed problems like hauntings or structural issues. 2-bedroom houses rent for $500 to $750 monthly. 3-bedroom houses go for $700 to $950. Apartments, when available, run $400 to $600 for 1 or 2 bedrooms. These are real market rates in a town where the rental market favors tenants and landlords are grateful for responsible renters who pay consistently. Queen's General Hospital provides emergency services and healthcare. Family doctors, though availability requires luck and persistence, and medical infrastructure adequate for the region. The town has schools, grocery stores, services, and infrastructure that functions. It's small but not dying, with enough population and economic activity to maintain services. According to rental listings from 2024 into 2025, properties advertise with phrases like ocean views, close to beaches, and character home, because landlords compete on amenities when they can't compete on price, since prices are already rock bottom by Nova Scotia standards. The rental market doesn't involve bidding wars or competing applications. It involves you calling a landlord who's relieved someone's interested. The economy includes fishing, forestry, tourism, and services. Employment is limited compared to Halifax 90 minutes away. But the cost savings from affordable rent allows lower income to support comfortable living. Remote work makes Liverpool increasingly viable for digital workers seeking Atlantic lifestyle without Halifax housing costs that require tech salaries. One person who relocated from Halifax described it as suddenly affording life again. Halifax rent was eating 60% of my income. Liverpool rent is 25%, leaving money for food that isn't rice and beans, occasional travel, and savings, which is a completely foreign concept after years of urban living where every dollar was spoken for before I earned it. Number 1, Tumbler Ridge, British Columbia. BC rent under $700. Tumbler Ridge sits in northeastern British Columbia with about 2,500 people and something previously thought impossible. BC rental prices that don't require tech salaries, family money, or crying while filling out applications. 2-bedroom apartments rent for $550 to $750 monthly. 3-bedroom houses go for $750 to $1,000. These are real BC properties in a province where average rents exceed $2,000, and Vancouver prices cause existential crises and financial counseling referrals. The town has a medical clinic with family doctors and basic healthcare services. For hospital care, Fort St. John is 90 minutes away, providing emergency services and more comprehensive medical facilities. The distance requires planning but is manageable when rent savings allow maintaining a reliable vehicle and having emergency funds that urban rent doesn't permit. According to rental listings, Tumbler Ridge properties advertise with mountain views, hiking trails nearby, and quiet community because landlords understand that people moving here seek lifestyle and affordability, not urban amenities or constant stimulation. The rental market is landlord-friendly in the sense that properties exist, but tenant-friendly in the sense that competition is minimal and landlords are reasonable about terms and pricing. The economy centers on coal mining and forestry, with employment fluctuating based on commodity prices and industry activity. Jobs exist in mining, municipal services, healthcare, education, and businesses supporting those industries. Remote work makes Tumbler Ridge viable for digital workers seeking BC mountain lifestyle without Vancouver or Whistler costs that require selling kidneys or working 3 jobs. Cost of living beyond rent is moderate. Groceries run $375 to $475 monthly, slightly higher than southern BC due to transportation. Utilities average $150 to $225 including heat, which matters in northern BC winter, but the overall budget including rent, utilities, food, and other expenses totals significantly less than just rent in Vancouver or Victoria. The location provides access to stunning mountain landscape, waterfalls, hiking trails, and outdoor recreation that rivals expensive BC destinations. The town sits in beautiful geography with nature access that urban British Columbians pay millions for in Whistler or the sea-to-sky corridor. Winter is northern BC winter, cold, snowy with temperatures dropping well below -20. The town receives significant snowfall, creating winter recreation opportunities, but also requiring winter driving skills and acceptance that snow removal is constant November through March. Summer is spectacular with hiking, camping, and enjoying mountains without crowds or paying park fees. One person who relocated from Vancouver described the financial transformation. Vancouver rent was $2,800 for a 1-bedroom apartment in a building where the elevator broke monthly, and the landlord responded to maintenance requests with apologies but no action. Tumbler Ridge rent is $700 for a 2-bedroom house with a yard, mountain views, and a landlord who fixes things. The $2,100 monthly difference means I'm saving for a down payment on actually buying a house, which seemed impossible in Vancouver where down payments require inheriting money or winning lotteries. The social aspect is small-town northern BC, working class, diverse population including miners from various backgrounds, and community life that's genuine because isolation creates interdependence. It's unpretentious, practical, and real in ways that wealthy BC communities perform but don't achieve. Privacy is limited in towns this small, but so is crime because reputation matters and everyone knows everyone. Subscribe if you learned something that makes you reconsider assumptions about Canadian housing, and comment with your rent and location so we can compare notes on who's getting robbed the most by landlords who treat shelter as investment opportunity rather than human necessity.